The massive space station hung in the void like a silver crown above the planet Kepler Prime. Ships from dozens of different worlds docked at its many ports, bringing diplomats and traders from across the galaxy to conduct their business. The Galactic Council Station was supposed to be neutral ground, a place where all species could meet and talk without fear. Jake Morrison adjusted his dark blue uniform as he walked through the station's main corridor. The human ambassador was tall and lean, with brown hair starting to show gray at the temples. His aide, Lisa Carter, walked beside him, carrying a datapad with the day's meeting notes. She was younger than Jake, with blonde hair pulled back in a neat bun and sharp green eyes that missed nothing. The Zephyrians requested this meeting, Lisa said quietly as they approached the conference room. They said it was about trade routes through the Outer Rim sectors. Jake nodded but felt uneasy. The Zephyrians were known throughout the galaxy for their aggressive ways. They looked like giant lizards walking on two legs with scales that change color based on their mood. Right now, Jake wished he could see their scales to know what they were really thinking. The conference room was large and circular, with a holographic display in the center showing star maps and trade data. Commander Veltar was already waiting, his 7-foot frame making the human-sized chair look small. His scales were a neutral brown color, which could mean anything. Two other Zephyrian officers stood behind him, their hands resting on their sidearms. "Ambassador Morrison," Veltar said, his voice deep and rough. "Please sit, we have much to discuss." Jake took his seat across from the Zephyrian commander, with Lisa sitting to his right. The holographic display showed shipping lanes that passed through both human and Zephyrian space. "Your people have been expanding quite rapidly," Veltar began, gesturing to the map. "New colonies, new trade routes, new mining operations. Very ambitious for such a young species. Humanity believes in growth and exploration," Jake replied carefully. "We've always been willing to work with our galactic neighbors." Veltar's scales shifted to a slightly darker shade. "Yes, but growth requires wisdom, experience, your species. Has only been in space for what, 200 years? That's barely a moment in galactic time." Lisa made a note on her datapad. Jake kept his expression neutral, though he could sense where this conversation was heading. "The Zephyrian Empire has been spacefaring for over 3,000 years, Veltar continued. "We've learned much about managing territory, about maintaining order. Perhaps it's time for humanity to benefit from our experience." "What exactly are you suggesting?" Jake asked. The holographic display changed, showing human colonies highlighted in red. "These Outer Rim settlements are so far from Earth, so difficult to protect, so vulnerable to pirates and raiders. The Zephyrian Empire could provide security services for these areas." "For a fee, I assume," Jake said. "Nothing is free in this galaxy, Ambassador. But the cost would be reasonable. Much less than what you would lose to pirates." Lisa leaned forward slightly. "Commander, are you saying that human shipping is currently under threat?" Veltar's scales darkened further. "The galaxy is a dangerous place, young human. Ships disappear all the time. Cargo gets lost. Crews vanish. It would be such a shame if something happened to your people out there in the dark." Jake felt his jaw tighten but kept his voice steady. "The Human Federation has always been able to protect its own interests. Has it?" Veltar gestured to his aide, who activated a new display. 3 days ago, the merchant vessel New Hope was detained by our patrol ships near the Rigel system. Routine inspection, you understand. However, we discovered some irregularities in their cargo manifest. "What kind of irregularities?" Lisa asked. "The kind that requires extended investigation. The ship and its crew are currently being held at our facility on Zephyr Prime, for their own safety, of course." Jake's knuckles went white as he gripped the armrest of his chair. "How long will this investigation take?" "That depends on many factors. Cooperation from the human government, for example. A willingness to work with us on broader security issues. These things could speed up the process considerably." The room fell silent except for the hum of the station's life support systems. Jake stared at the display showing the human colonies, thinking about the families living on those distant worlds, thinking about the merchant crews who just wanted to make an honest living. "I'll need to consult with Earth before we can discuss any security arrangements," Jake said finally. Of course, Veltar replied, his scales now almost black. But I wouldn't wait too long. The New Hope isn't the only human ship in Zephyrian space. The merchant vessels Star Dancer and Freedom's Call are also currently under investigation. So many irregularities lately, Lisa's pen snapped in her hand. Jake placed a calming hand on her arm. I understand, Jake said, standing up. We'll be in touch. As the humans prepared to leave, Veltar called out, Oh, Ambassador. One more thing. The families on board those ships, they were heading to new colonies, weren't they? Children, elderly, pregnant women? Space travel is so dangerous for the weak. I do hope nothing happens to them while they're in our custody. Jake turned back, his eyes cold. Commander, I want to be very clear about something. Those are human citizens under the protection of the Human Federation. Their safety is our highest priority. As it should be, Veltar replied, his scales showing hints of red now. But protection has a price. Everything has a price. Jake and Lisa left the conference room without another word. As they walked down the corridor, Lisa could hear Veltar speaking to his aide in the Zephyrian language. Her translation implant picked up fragments, mammals, weakness, proper place. Sir, Lisa whispered, are we just going to let them threaten us like this? Jake stopped walking and turned to face her. Lisa, what you just witnessed wasn't diplomacy, it was extortion. They're holding human civilians hostage and demanding protection money. So what do we do? Jake looked out through the station's viewport at the stars beyond. We go home, we tell our government exactly what happened here, and then we let them decide how humanity wants to handle bullies. As they boarded their ship, for the journey back to Earth, neither Jake nor Lisa noticed the Zephyrian surveillance drone following them. Veltar watched from the station's command center as the human vessel jumped to hyperspace. The mammals will learn their place soon enough, he said to his aide. They always do. But Commander Veltar had made one crucial mistake. He had assumed that humans would react like every other species the Zephyrians had bullied over the centuries. He had no idea that humanity was about to respond in a way that would shake the entire galaxy. The emergency session room deep beneath the surface of Earth was filled with tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Admiral Peter Hayes sat at the head of the long metal table, his weathered face showing the strain of 40 years in the human Defense Force. Around him sat the most powerful people in human space, all waiting to hear what Jake Morrison had to report. 3 ships, Jake said, his voice steady but angry. The New Hope, the Star Dancer, and the Freedom's Call. All taken under the excuse of cargo inspections. All carrying families heading to the Rim colonies. Director of Colonial Affairs. Monica Wells leaned forward in her chair. She was a small woman with silver hair and fierce blue eyes that had seen too much in her time, managing humanity's expansion into space. How many people are we talking about? 437. Souls, Lisa Carter replied, reading from her datapad. Including 63 children under the age of 12. The room fell silent. Captain Ryan Brooks, the intelligence officer responsible for monitoring alien activities, cleared his throat. This isn't the first incident. We've been tracking similar patterns with the hegemony of Keth and the Crystalline Collective. Admiral Hayes turned to face the younger man. Explain. Ryan activated the holographic display in the center of the table. Red dots appeared scattered across the galaxy map, each one marking a human ship or installation that had suffered mysterious problems in the past 6 months. The hegemony has been conducting safety inspections of human mining operations in the Vega sector. They've shut down 4 facilities so far, citing environmental concerns. Meanwhile, the Crystalline Collective has been demanding tribute payments from human traders passing through their space, calling it a transit tax for using their hyperspace routes. Monica's hands clenched into fists. They're coordinating. This isn't random harassment. That's our assessment as well, Ryan continued. All 3 major powers seem to be testing us. They want to see if humans will bend the knee like the other minor species have done. Admiral Hayes stood up and walked to the viewport that showed Earth's blue surface far above. How long have we been members of the Galactic Council? "47 years, sir," Jake replied. "And in those 47 years, have we ever failed to honor our agreements? Have we ever broken a treaty or attacked another species without cause? No, sir, our record is clean." "Then why are they treating us like criminals?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Everyone in the room knew the answer, but nobody wanted to say it out loud. Finally, Monica spoke up. "Because they think we're weak, because we've always tried to solve problems with words instead of weapons. Because we've been too polite, too reasonable, too eager to make friends." Admiral Hayes turned back to face the table. "Captain Brooks, what do our intelligence reports say about the military capabilities of these three powers?" Ryan pulled up new data on the holographic display. "Individually, each one is roughly equal to our current fleet strength. Together, they would outnumber us 3-1. But, sir, that's based on our known capabilities." "Our known capabilities," Hayes repeated slowly. "And what about our unknown capabilities?" A slight smile crossed Ryan's face. "That's a different story entirely, sir." The Admiral walked back to his chair but remained standing. "Ladies and gentlemen, for the past 20 years, the Human Defense Force has been preparing for exactly this scenario. We've been building ships in hidden shipyards, training soldiers in secret facilities, and developing weapons that no alien species has ever seen." Lisa looked confused. "But, sir, the military budget reports to Congress show standard defense spending." "The public reports show what we want them to show," Hayes replied. "The real military budget is buried in infrastructure projects, mining operations, and scientific research. We've been very careful to keep our true strength hidden." Monica leaned back in her chair. "My God, how long have you been planning this?" "Since the day we first encountered the Zephyrians," Hayes said. "We knew this would happen eventually. Species don't change their nature overnight. Bullies will always be bullies, whether they're in a school playground or ruling an empire." Jake stood up from his chair. "Sir, what are you suggesting we do about the hostages?" "Nothing," Hayes replied coldly. "At least, nothing that looks like we're doing something." The room erupted in protests, but Hayes held up his hand for silence. "I didn't say we were abandoning them. I said we're not going to play their game." "Captain Brooks, initiate Protocol 7? Ryan's eyes widened. "Sir, are you sure?" "Once we start Protocol 7, there's no going back, I'm sure. It's time to show the galaxy who they're really dealing with." Ryan activated his personal communicator. "Control, this is Brooks. Authorization code Alpha 77. Initiate Protocol 7 immediately." Within minutes, every human diplomatic mission in the galaxy received the same message. Ambassador Kate Sullivan was in the middle of a trade negotiation with the Altarian Republic when her aide handed her the sealed orders. She read them twice, then calmly gathered her papers. "I'm sorry, but this meeting is concluded," she told the confused Altarian officials. "The Human Federation is temporarily suspending all diplomatic relations to conduct an internal review of our galactic policies." The same scene played out on dozens of worlds. Human ambassadors politely excused themselves from meetings, packed their belongings, and departed for Earth. Trade negotiations were abandoned. Cultural exchanges were canceled. Scientific collaborations were terminated. The human embassy on the Galactic Council station was the last to go dark. Ambassador Richard Stone stood in his office, looking out at the busy docking bays filled with ships from across the galaxy. His deputy, Carol Martinez, stood beside him with a concerned expression. "Sir, are we really going to cut all communication with the Council?" she asked. "Those are our orders," Stone replied. 47 years of trying to be good neighbors has earned us nothing but contempt. Maybe it's time to try a different approach." As the human embassy shut down its systems and prepared to depart, automated messages began broadcasting from every human facility in the galaxy. The message was simple and identical everywhere. "The Human Federation is temporarily suspending all diplomatic relations to conduct an internal review of our galactic policies. Further communication will be initiated when this review is complete." Back on Earth, Admiral Hayes watched the reports coming in from across human space. "How long before they realize what we're really doing?" Based on their intelligence capabilities, I'd estimate 6 months before they figure out we're not just sulking, Ryan replied. And how long before we're ready? 12 months, sir. Maybe less if we push the production schedules. Hayes nodded slowly. Then we have 6 months to prepare for the most important year in human history. The galaxy was about to learn that humans had been taking notes all along. Every insult, every threat, every act of aggression had been carefully recorded and filed. Away, the bill was coming due, and humanity was about to collect with interest. 3 weeks had passed since the humans went silent, and panic was spreading through the galaxy like wildfire. On the trading world of Nexus Prime, Altarian merchant Captain Zara Moonwhisper stared at her cargo manifest with growing frustration. Half of her regular shipping contracts were with human companies, and now they had all vanished overnight. Still no word from Terra Shipping? Her first officer asked. Nothing, Zara replied, her blue-scaled hands trembling slightly. Their offices are closed, their communication channels are dead, and their ships have disappeared from every major trade route. The same scene was playing out across the galaxy. The Centauri Commerce Guild had lost 40% of their freight capacity when human shipping companies went dark. The Vegan Agricultural Collective couldn't move their grain harvests because human transport vessels had simply vanished. Even the mighty Zephyrian Empire was feeling the pinch as their luxury goods sat in warehouses with no human buyers on the Galactic Council Station. Secretary General Vexano of the Neutral Worlds Coalition called an emergency session. The alien diplomat was a tall, thin creature with 4 arms and skin that shifted colors based on his emotions. Right now, his skin was a deep purple that indicated extreme concern. The council chamber was packed with representatives from across the galaxy. The usual diplomatic chatter was replaced by worried whispers and nervous glances. Even the most powerful species seemed unsure of what to do about the human silence. The chair recognizes Ambassador Veltar of the Zephyrian Empire. Vexano announced. The massive lizard-like creature stood up, his scales showing a confident green color. Fellow council members, the Zephyrian Empire believes that humanity's withdrawal is nothing more than a childish tantrum. They will return when they realize they cannot survive without galactic trade. Murmurs of agreement came from some sections of the chamber, but others remained skeptical. Ambassador Clix of the hegemony of Keth rose to speak. The insect-like being clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. With respect to my Zephyrian colleague, our intelligence suggests this is more than a simple diplomatic protest. Human patrol fleets have vanished from their regular routes. Their defense stations have gone silent. Something significant is happening in human space. The chamber erupted in concerned chatter. Vexano raised his upper 2 arms for silence. The chair recognizes Dr. Vexara of the Altarian Republic. The blue-scaled scientist activated a holographic display showing energy readings from across the galaxy. Honored colleagues, I have been monitoring electromagnetic signatures from human space. What I have discovered is deeply troubling. The hologram showed the human solar system with massive energy spikes emanating from various points. These readings indicate industrial activity on a scale never before seen. Energy consumption in human space has increased by 400% in the past 3 weeks. Shocked gasps echoed through the chamber. The Crystalline Collective's representative, a being made of living crystal named Shard Speaker Harmony, resonated with a worried tone. 400%? That is impossible. No species can expand their industrial capacity that quickly. Unless, Dr. Vexara continued, they already had the capacity built and were simply waiting to activate it. The implications of this statement sent ripples of fear through the assembled delegates. Ambassador Felthara of the Rigel Confederation stood up, her tentacles writhing with anxiety. Are you suggesting that humans have been lying about their capabilities? I am suggesting that we may have severely underestimated them, Dr. Vexara replied. Commander Veltar slammed his fist on the table. Impossible. The Zephyrian Empire has detailed intelligence on human military capabilities. They have perhaps 300 ships of the line. Their technology is decades behind our own. Then explain this, Dr. Vexara said, changing the holographic. Display. The new image showed deep space sensor readings from the outer rim of human territory. Massive structures were visible in the asteroid belts around human colonies, structures that hadn't been there a month ago. Our long-range sensors have detected what appear to be shipyards in every human system. Not small facilities, but massive. Construction complexes capable of building hundreds of vessels simultaneously. The chamber fell silent. Even Commander Veltar's confident scales began to show hints of yellow, indicating uncertainty. Ambassador Trill of the Outer Rim Territories spoke up. My people have been monitoring human shipping lanes for months. 3 weeks ago, all human merchant vessels simply disappeared. But yesterday, our sensors detected something else. Warning beacons? Warning beacons? Vexano asked. Automated systems broadcasting a simple message. This sector is temporarily off limits to non-human vessels. They're scattered throughout what used to be open space routes. The fear in the chamber was now palpable. Species that had been confident in their superiority just hours ago were beginning to realize they might have made a terrible mistake. Dr. Vexara activated another display. There is more. Our deep space monitoring stations have detected massive fleet movements within human space. Ships are massing at strategic points throughout their territory. How many ships? Ambassador Clicks asked, his mandibles clicking nervously. We cannot get accurate counts because of interference, but our estimates suggest thousands of vessels. Far more than humans have ever possessed. Commander Veltar stood up abruptly. This is ridiculous. Where would they get thousands of ships? Where would they build them? Our intelligence networks would have detected such construction. Unless, said a new voice from the back of the chamber, your intelligence networks were being fed false information. All eyes turned to Ambassador. Nexus of the Tau Ceti Federation, a species known for their advanced surveillance capabilities. The gray-skinned humanoid walked to the center of the chamber. The Tau Ceti Federation has been monitoring human space for over 30 years. We have always been puzzled by certain inconsistencies in their reported activities. Mining operations. That seemed too large for their stated purposes. Research stations in remote locations with no apparent scientific value. Transportation of materials that didn't match their declared industrial needs. The chamber was deadly quiet now. Even the ventilation system seemed to have stopped working. We now believe, Ambassador Nexus continued, that humans have been conducting a massive deception operation for decades. They have been building a military infrastructure while pretending to be a peaceful trading species. Commander Veltar's scales had turned completely yellow. You're saying they've been planning this all along? I'm saying they've been preparing for the day when the galaxy would try to subjugate them. That day appears to have arrived. Vexano's skin color had shifted to a deep red indicating extreme alarm. What do we do? We pray, Ambassador Nexus replied quietly, that humans are more merciful than we have been. As the emergency session continued into the night, reports kept coming in from across the galaxy. Human colonies had activated massive defense systems that no one knew existed. Human ships were moving in formations that suggested military coordination on an unprecedented scale. And most disturbing of all, every attempt to communicate with human space was met with the same automated response. Communications temporarily suspended. The galaxy was beginning to realize that humanity had been playing a very long game, and they were about to find out what happened when the game was over. 5 months had passed since humanity went silent, and the galaxy was about to learn the truth. Deep in the asteroid belt around the star Volf 359, Commander Elena Rodriguez sat in her stealth ship watching the massive construction yards through her tactical display. The human intelligence officer had been waiting for this moment for weeks. Are you sure about this? Her communications officer asked nervously. Orders are orders, Elena replied, her fingers dancing across the control panel. It's time to show them what we've been building? The ship's quantum transmitter activated, sending heavily encrypted data packets to intelligence networks across the galaxy. The information would take hours to decode, but when it did, The entire galactic community would see footage that would change everything on the hegemony of Keth home world. Intelligence Director Haxtell was working late in his office when the decoded transmission arrived. The insect-like being's compound eyes widened as he watched the footage. Massive shipyards stretched for thousands of kilometers through the asteroid field, each one churning out warships at an impossible rate. "This cannot be real," he whispered to himself. But the quantum signatures proved the footage was authentic. The ships being built were unlike anything in the galactic database. They were larger than Zephyrian battle cruisers, more heavily armed than crystalline collective dreadnoughts, and equipped with armor that seemed to absorb energy weapons instead of deflecting them. Similar reactions were happening across the galaxy as intelligence agencies received the same footage. On the crystalline collective's capital world, Shard Speaker Clarity studied the images with growing horror. The crystal being's inner light dimmed as she realized the implications. "They have been building for decades," she told her military advisors. "This level of construction requires years of preparation." But the shipyards were only the beginning. The second wave of leaked footage showed entire planets that had been converted into weapons factories. Mining worlds that were stripping asteroids bare to feed the hungry production lines. Training facilities where human soldiers practiced with equipment that made their previous technology look primitive on the Zephyrian homeworld. Admiral Crickstell gathered his senior staff in the war room. The massive lizard scales had turned a sickly gray color as he watched the intelligence reports. "How did we miss this?" he demanded. "Sir, our intelligence networks reported exactly what the humans wanted them to report," replied Colonel Vextara. "Every piece of information we gathered about their military capabilities was carefully crafted to make them appear weak." "You're telling me they've been lying to us for decades?" "Sir, I'm telling you they've been preparing for war while we thought they were preparing for peace." The most disturbing footage came from the human training facilities. Soldiers empowered. Armor moved with speed and precision that defied physics. Weapons tests showed energy rifles that could cut through battleship armor. Most shocking of all were the footage of human space marines boarding and clearing mock enemy vessels in minutes. General Marcus Cole appeared in the final transmission, his weathered face showing the strain of decades of secret preparation. He was standing in what appeared to be a command center overlooking one of the massive shipyards. "To my former colleagues in the Altarian military," he began, his voice carrying across the galaxy through carefully planned intelligence leaks. "You know me as a man of honor. You know I would not lie to you about something this important." The general gestured to the shipyard behind him. "What you are seeing is the result of 40 years of careful planning. We have been building this fleet not because we wanted war, but because we knew it would eventually come to us." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. "We remember every threat, every insult, every time your governments treated us like children to be managed instead of equals to be respected. We are not angry about it. We are simply disappointed." The transmission continued with detailed documentation of every aggressive act committed against humanity over the past decade. The evidence was overwhelming and carefully organized. Trade. Blockades disguised as safety inspections. Diplomatic immunity violations. Threats against civilian populations. Extortion masked as protection services. "We tried to solve these problems through proper channels," General Cole continued. "We filed complaints with the Galactic Council. We requested mediation. We attempted to negotiate in good faith. The response was always the same. Humanity needed to understand its place in the galactic order." The footage shifted to show the 3 human merchant ships that had been taken by the Zephyrians. The vessels were still in custody, their crews and passengers being held under increasingly harsh conditions. "We know about the hostages," General Cole said, his voice turning cold. "We know about the families being held as leverage. We know about the children who haven't seen their parents in months. This ends now." The transmission cut to tactical displays showing the true scope of the human fleet. Thousands of ships organized into battle groups that dwarfed anything the galaxy had ever seen. Each vessel was equipped with technology that had been developed in secret over decades. The Human Federation withdraws from all existing galactic treaties effective immediately, General Cole announced. We are establishing new terms of engagement based on mutual respect rather than submission. The final part of the transmission showed Admiral Hayes himself, standing on the bridge of a massive command ship. Behind him, tactical displays showed the entire human fleet preparing for deployment. Any species that wishes to continue peaceful relations with humanity may apply through our new diplomatic protocols, Hayes said calmly. These protocols are based on equality, not hierarchy. We will not be anyone's subjects. He paused, his eyes showing the steel that had been forged over decades of preparation. Any species that chooses to continue their aggressive policies toward humanity will discover why we are the only known species to have evolved on a death world. The transmission ended with coordinates for a new human diplomatic station and a simple message: the age of human submission is over. The age of human equality begins now. Across the galaxy, military leaders stared at their screens in shock. The species that they had dismissed as weak and naive had been preparing for this moment for decades. The humans hadn't just built a fleet. They had built the most powerful military force in galactic history. In the Zephyrian war room, Admiral Crickstel looked at his staff with growing dread. Can we match this fleet? Sir, even if we combined all three major powers, we would still be outnumbered 2-1. And that's assuming their technology is equal to ours. Which it clearly isn't. Colonel Vextara added quietly. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity had been taking very careful notes all along. Every species that had treated them as prey was about to discover they had been dealing with apex predators, who had simply been choosing not to hunt. 1 year had passed since humanity went silent, and the galaxy was about to receive the shock of its existence. President Amanda Foster stood in the command center of the massive space station orbiting Earth, watching as technicians made final preparations for the most important broadcast in human history. All networks are ready, Madam President, announced Communication Director Bobby Chun. We'll be transmitting on every frequency used by every species in the galaxy. Amanda nodded, her gray hair pulled back in a simple style that made her look like everyone's grandmother. But her blue eyes held the steel of someone who had made the hardest decision in human history. Begin transmission, she said calmly. Across the galaxy, every communication device suddenly activated without warning. On the Galactic Council station, delegates who had been arguing about the human silence for months suddenly found their personal communicators, their wall screens, and even their data pads all showing the same image, a human woman sitting behind a simple desk. Citizens of the galaxy, President Foster began, her voice carrying to billions of beings across thousands of worlds. I am Amanda Foster, President of the Human Federation. For the past year, we have been silent while conducting a comprehensive review of our place in the galactic community. On the Zephyrian homeworld, Commander Veltar watched the broadcast with growing unease. The technology required to override every communication system in the galaxy simultaneously was beyond anything he had thought possible. Today, I am here to announce our conclusions, President Foster continued. The Human Federation hereby withdraws from all existing galactic treaties and establishes new terms of engagement with all species. The President activated a holographic display that showed documented evidence of every aggressive act committed against humanity over the past decade. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable: trade blockades, diplomatic threats, hostage-taking, extortion, and systematic attempts to subjugate human colonies. We have tried diplomacy, President Foster said, her voice remaining calm despite the weight of her words. We have tried negotiation. We have tried being the reasonable voice in galactic politics. These approaches have failed because they were based on the false assumption that other species would treat us as equals. On the Crystalline Collective's capital world, Shard Speaker Harmony watched the broadcast with growing horror. The Human President was systematically dismantling every justification the major powers had used for their aggressive policies. The evidence shows that the major galactic powers have been coordinating their efforts to force humanity into a subordinate position, President Foster continued. They have treated us not as fellow citizens of the galaxy, but as resources to be managed and controlled. The holographic display shifted to show the 3 human merchant ships that had been held captive by the Zephyrians. The footage showed families separated, children crying for their parents, and crew members being interrogated under harsh conditions. 437 human citizens have been held hostage for over a year, President Foster said, her voice hardening. Their only crime was trying to build new lives on the frontier worlds. Their captors have used them as leverage to force political concessions from our government. The broadcast continued with detailed documentation of similar incidents involving the hegemony of Keth and the Crystalline Collective. Every threat, every act of aggression, every attempt at intimidation had been carefully recorded and preserved. We gave the galaxy 47 years to prove that peaceful coexistence was possible. President Foster concluded, the galaxy has chosen to answer with threats and hostage-taking. Very well, the Human Federation accepts that diplomacy has failed. The transmission cut to a view of space around the Galactic Council Station. Thousands of ships suddenly appeared, out of hyperspace surrounding the massive diplomatic facility. They were human ships, but unlike any vessels the galaxy had ever seen, each ship was massive, bristling with weapons that seemed to bend light around them. Their hulls were dark and angular, designed not for exploration or trade, but for war. The fleet that materialized around the station was larger than the combined military forces of the 3 major powers. Admiral Hayes appeared on the broadcast, standing on the bridge of the largest ship. Behind him, tactical displays showed the deployment of the human fleet across the galaxy. This is Admiral Peter Hayes, commanding the Human Defense Fleet, he announced. For the past year, we have been preparing for this moment. The fleet you see represents the true military capability of humanity. On the hegemony of Keth home world, Intelligence Director Hackstall stared at his tactical displays in disbelief. Human ships were appearing throughout the galaxy, taking positions around major military installations and trade centers. How many ships? He whispered to his aide. Sir, our computers are still counting, but preliminary estimates suggest over 10,000 vessels. 10,000? Hackstall's compound eyes widened in shock. That's impossible. No species has ever fielded a fleet that size. Admiral Hayes continued his broadcast. The Human Federation will no longer participate in a galactic order that treats us as subjects rather than equals. Any species that wishes to establish peaceful relations with humanity may apply through our new diplomatic protocols. The camera zoomed in on the Admiral's face, showing eyes that held 40 years of careful planning and preparation. Any species that chooses to continue aggressive policies toward humanity will learn why we are the only known species to have survived on a death world. The broadcast shifted back to President Foster. The hostages held by the Zephyrian Empire, the hegemony of Keth, and the Crystalline Collective will be released immediately. The illegal blockades of human shipping will be lifted. The extortion disguised as protection services will end. Her voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. These are not requests. These are not negotiations. These are the terms under which humanity will continue to exist in this galaxy. The transmission ended with coordinates for a new human diplomatic station and a simple message. The age of human submission is over. The age of mutual respect begins now. In the aftermath of the broadcast, chaos erupted across the galaxy. On the Galactic Council Station, Secretary General Vexano called an emergency session, but many delegates had already fled to their ships. Commander Veltar stood in the Zephyrian war room, staring at tactical displays that showed human ships surrounding every major Zephyrian installation. "What are our options?" he asked his staff. "Sir, we have no options," Colonel Vexthar replied quietly. "If we resist, they will destroy us. If we comply, we lose everything we've built." "Then we comply," Veltar said, his scales showing the gray of defeat. "Release the hostages, lift the blockades." Send a message to the human fleet that we accept their terms. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy as the major powers realized they had awakened something far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. The species they had dismissed as weak and naive had been preparing for this moment for decades. Jake Morrison stood in the new human embassy, a massive space station bristling with defensive systems and surrounded by the most advanced fleet in the galaxy. The former ambassador smiled as he watched alien diplomats queuing up to request meetings under humanity's new protocols. The galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had shown that sometimes the best way to ensure peace was to be prepared for war.